much. Well, GDP growth came in at 3.5% this morning, and Wall Street's rallying in response. Now let's get Washington's take on these numbers. White House economic advisor Christina Romer joins us now. Dr. Romer, thank you so much for joining us. Now, of course, the economy is growing, and yet unemployment is high, and it's slated to go even higher. How do you politically address these two issues?
Well, of course, certainly today's news is that the economy is growing, and I think that is a major accomplishment. If you think back just 2 quarters ago, we were falling at a 6.4% annual rate. So to be actually growing at 3.5% is very welcome news. But as you pointed out, I mean, one of the things that we do know is that the labor market, employment, unemployment, tends to turn around more slowly. And so while the turnaround in GDP is a necessary first step, we need to keep it going so that we do finally see us adding jobs again and the unemployment rate finally coming down.
And Dr. Romer,
in terms of
sorry, and speaking with that turnaround in the GDP story, there are clear concerns on how much the consumer will play a role in the fourth quarter, in the first quarter, in terms of the overall component. What will be the drivers, in your opinion, with respect to the consumer? Because there are some concerns they will not be making up as big a part of GDP going forward.
Well, I mean, we do know that consumers have been through a lot. They've seen a lot of their housing wealth go down, their stock market wealth go down, and they've been through a rough time. We do expect to see them saving more on average going forward. Today's GDP number is a good sign, though. We do see consumers, it looks like they're starting to get their legs. I mean, a big part of their spending was on cars, and cash for clunkers, of course, played a role. But it was widespread. They were also buying non-durable goods. They're buying services. So I think we do see consumers getting a little bit of their spending behavior back. You know, so we do think they're probably not going to come roaring back like the olden days when they were spending beyond their means, but we do think we're going to see them having more confidence and buying what they need.
Dr. Romer, let me jump in here if I may, please. So far, so good. It seems like we've turned the corner. Stimulus has a lot to do with that, clearly. In terms of the debt, another record week of debt issuance. What's the administration's view on, once we get through the stimulus, of not having to issue so much debt? When are we going to get our financial house in order?
It is certainly an issue. We do know that the budget deficit, which is what then leads to needing to issue debt, is very large, in substantial part because of how bad the recession has been, and substantial part because of policies that's been taken in the past. You know, recovery is obviously going to be important for the deficit. So the more we can get people back employed, the economy going again, that's going to be good for the deficit. But in my mind, and I actually gave a speech on this on Monday, how important it is that we're in the middle of health care reform, because we know looking forward 20, 30 years, it's health care spending by the government that is a big part of that budget deficit. So doing health care reform in a responsible way that genuinely slows the growth rate of costs, that's the #1 thing we could do right now to get the deficit under control for the future.
Dr. Romer, we're also expecting, of course, that report tomorrow on jobs created thanks to the stimulus. Can you give us a little bit of the highlights of that?
Well, absolutely. You're right. This is the data that's going to be coming in, is what we call the direct reporting. That's, you know, everyone that got a grant or money through the stimulus package has to fill out a form of how many jobs did they save or create. So these would be like the contractors building roads or the school districts that got some of that state fiscal relief. You know, we think those are going to be important. We do anticipate that they're going to show that the fiscal stimulus has done a lot for job retention and creation. It is important to kind of keep them.
Thank you so much. I unfortunately have to cut you off because we're almost at the end of the program.